In the animal kingdom, a portion of human beings are mutating into animal hybrids. They face discrimination and uncertainty as the world struggles to deal with this new epidemic. Think X-Men, but with less superheroics. Let's take a look. Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
I come in peace.
Caw, caw.
I was going to do that. Like, I was debating it right up until the moment I said it, and then I decided against it.
Well, I got there first, so now I look the comic genius, and you're lagging behind like a chump.
Yeah, I'll take it. I mean, I'm not the guy doing bird noises on the internet, so whatever.
Hey, they love it. They love the bird noises. Welcome, everyone. It's a science fiction movie podcast. We get together, we talk about sci-fi movies. It's that simple. And today we're looking at a French film called The Animal Kingdom from 2023. So it's another sort of recent-ish film we're catching up on. Interesting premise, this one, where throughout the world, some people, kind of like it's honestly not that dissimilar in a way to that movie. Was it Little Fish we did with the voice disease? This is like people are starting to mutate into animals.
Little Fish was the memory, I thought.
That was the memories. Was there a voice one as well?
I don't recall a voice
No,
one.
I think that's what I was thinking of. I just said voice instead of memory.
Yeah, gotcha.
All right, that's right. Yeah. Little Fish. I think it's because I almost said Little Voices, but it wasn't Little Voices. No, it's Little Fish. That was the voice one. In my head, it made some amount of sense. But yeah. People around the world are starting to develop mutations where they're becoming animals, and not just physically, but their mental states are kind of turning more into the animal they're becoming. And that's the basic premise. We follow a father and son, who the mother of the family is like a sort of a victim of this. Like even before the movie starts, she's already had this problem, and that's kind of the backdrop for them and where they're going in the story. So that kind of sums up. We'll start spoiler-free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into the spoilers. And if you are enjoying the show on YouTube, please do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch if you do. And you can get bonus shows and support all the content if you want to go over to Patreon, but I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So if you can't tell, this is actually the first episode since the European daylight savings kicked in, because the sun is beaming behind me, and I look like I'm in an angelic music video or something right now.
Peter actually had to wake up at a decent time.
What are you talking about? This is later than it was last week. This is...
Oh, that's right. So why is the sun more propped up on your side then?
Because daylight savings makes it so that the sun's out later. That's how the time shifts.
I hate this. I hate this so much. I can never keep track. Like, you have it, I don't know, maybe it's a foreign relations thing, but you have it so locked down every time it hits every year where you're like, yes, I have to wake up at this time, you have to wake up at that time. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there like, I don't, yes, boss, whatever you say. I have no idea.
Well, you never have to do everything different. I just did everything early for a couple of weeks to accommodate.
Oh, yeah. No, I understand. I'm American. I can't be asked to change, but like, still, it's confusing to me.
Yes, it is confusing, yes. But yeah, the sun's beaming outside. The army all happy. I'd rather it was dark still, but hey, whatever. We're getting spring. It is what it is. Time for animals. We're here for an animal movie.
Perfect time for this movie, where all the animals are out chirping, having fun, and we're sitting inside thinking, screw them. Why did they get to have fun?
So yeah, knew very little about this going in. Obviously, I discovered it looking for science fiction recommendations from the last few years, but it was something that I knew so little about that when we checked the schedule to see what was coming up soon, and I saw this on there, I went, what is that? I didn't remember adding it to the schedule. That's how unknown it was to me. So very curious coming in to see how this was going to play out, but yeah, we'll get into it though. David, what did you think of The Animal Kingdom?
I like the concept of it. I definitely think it had a solid foundation of an idea there. The special effects and practical effects that they used for it are also very well done. I think my critique of it is that it feels like for such an interesting idea, it didn't quite go far enough in places. I was really interested in some of the ideas that they were bringing up, especially as how is the world reacting to this? but the story is far more insular. It's far more focused on this one specific village, and even more specifically, like this father-son pair. And the reactions from the world at large are kind of muted, kind of not there as much as I would have liked them to be. But I mean, I could go on and on about what I would like the movie to be. For what it is, I think it is still a very solidly made film. Obviously, there's a lot of subtext and parallels to things that actually happen in the real world. It is very much in that level of science fiction where it's a parable about something that, you know, humans do or have done previously in the history of man. And I think it's got quite a bit to say in that, but I also think by the time you hit the end of it, it's just kind of striking at the most broad statements rather than saying something very specific about, like, this is what needs to be done, or this is what we need to look at more specifically. It's kind of just a, oh yeah, man kind of sucks in a lot of ways movie.
I think the premise is strong, and I think the central arc is... I'm fine with it being insular. I'm fine with it just focusing on the father and son and what they're going through and kind of like where they are at the start and then where the arc takes them by the end. I think that the beats that play by the end and the way that relationship changes, I think makes complete sense to me and is a satisfying arc to have. Where I kind of struggle with it a little bit and come away not just wanting to praise it is more just a general sense of like pacing and things like that, where the movie's just over 2 hours, and I think at times I was kind of feeling it slog a little bit. I was feeling it kind of needing to I think all the things that happen are pretty much stuff that should happen, but I think you could have condensed things down, tightened them up a little bit, and made it feel like it was just going at a nice, steadier pace. It really feels like an example of me of, like, if this movie was 100 minutes, if it was just trimmed down 20 minutes, and I don't even mean cut out any plot beats, I'm not saying cut out anything that actually happens in the movie, just tighten everything up a little bit so that it's going at a nice, steady pace, I think I would have come out of this feeling a bit more positive. As it was, there was definitely sections by the time we were in the middle of the movie, and I was, oh, there's an hour left, really? I feel like we should be kind of ramping into the third act properly at this point, and we weren't quite there yet. That was kind of frustrating for me a little bit. What I will say on a positive side is, yeah, some of the ideas are cool, and some of the things that they try and tackle are interesting. I think the performances are pretty good, as best I can tell. I think there was a couple of moments in particular where, like, without spoiling kind of what they're going through, the teenage character like reacts to something, and sometimes just the way he would just suddenly yell out in like a sort of like screech would be very convincing and in a very almost like, oh, unconventional way to act, and it made it feel more real as a result, and I kind of appreciated that. I would also say that for the most part, the effects of the people who have transformed into animals, I would say like 90% of that is actually quite impressive in this movie, and looks quite convincing. There's only a few specific bigger moments where it's maybe like stretching the bounds of what they can accomplish, and maybe they have to rely more on CG than the practical things they were doing. But for the most part, whenever there was like they call them critters in the movie, it's like the derogatory term in the movies, they call them as a critter around. Whenever they were on screen, I found myself thinking, oh, that actually looks quite good. Like from this like arty French sci-fi drama, I wasn't necessarily expecting good effects, but for the most part, they're pretty solid.
Yeah, no, I found myself playing a guessing game every time that we saw a critter on screen of, can I tell exactly what animal that's blended with? And for the most part, it seems pretty easy to tell. Like there's a little bit of, you know, as they're slowly, because it's a slow mutation over the course for a lot of them. So not, you see some of them as they're very deep into it. You see some of them as they're very, like, you know, having features, but not quite there yet.
Yeah. And you see some that are like basically just fully turned into a creature at a certain point.
Right. And I found myself actually, the ones that were more fully turned into the creature were actually the ones that I found a little bit more difficult to tell what exactly it was. Like, without spoiling anything, there's a few that were like a little off.
I'm so glad you're saying this, because I really don't have any idea what animal the mum's supposed to be.
Right.
I legitimately did not know. I googled it to see if there was an answer on the internet, and the internet just failed me. It did not give me a straight answer.
If I had to guess, it's somewhere between like a bear and a sloth.
Yeah, I was thinking like it was reminding me almost of like a sea lion, but obviously much bigger because it's like bear sized. But I was like, is this like a sea lion face? It feels like a kind of a sea lion face.
Oh, okay. So that was are you talking about the one that interrupted the party?
Wasn't the mom the same though? Because we see
No, that's it. The one that interrupted the party was not the mom. That was a separate one.
I know, but I thought when we saw the mum, and it was definitely the mum later, I thought it was the same creature.
No, I don't think so.
No, okay.
That's what I'm saying. I thought it was a bear or a sloth or something like that, because the one is definitely a sea lion. That's the one that I knocked like directly. I'm like, that's absolutely a seal. But the later one, it was just kind of this weird blend of again, it's a furry creature and it's got bear-like attributes, but when you see the face, it's this strange middle ground of still some human features, but very animalistic, so it's very hard to tell exactly what the creature's supposed to be.
All right, okay. Well, luckily we can be kind of vague about some of the other ones in the movie. We'll just say vaguely a dog-like creature, vaguely a bird creature. We don't have to go too more specific than that for most of them.
That's also something that I do like about this movie, is that while it is definitely still in science fiction, there is no attempt at an explanation for this. There is no part where they go in and say, here's the reason why these mutations are happening, blah, blah, climate change, whatever. But because of that, they're allowed to do anything. Like, does it make any sense that we aren't all just turning into closer to ape-like creatures? Like, how does it make any sense that a man in this movie actually transforms closer into a bird? It doesn't, but because they're not going for the explanation, it allows it to keep this fantastical element of, it's essentially magic, but they're viewing it through the lens of the real world is having to experience this, so it turns into a science fiction element.
Yeah, I think the world, in the way the world sort of like reacts to it, feels very natural and realistic. Obviously, we don't get this larger scope of like, we never cut to like the government talking about what they're going to do about this epidemic or whatever it is. We get little slithers, we get the local reaction to things. But that keeps it feeling very grounded, and therefore it does feel more like science fiction to me. And if nothing else, because I saw when I was Googling for an answer to what creature is the mum, I saw an article. I didn't read the article, but there was a couple of articles that was basically about this movie and talking about how, this is like a new take that's, harkening into all of our experiences in the coronavirus. And I sort of paused and went, no, it's not. This is, I mean, yeah, technically there's like a spread of something to an extent, and I can see how something like a Little Fish kind of feels like it's a take on that, even though it wasn't, because it was made before all that happened. But
right.
This is way more comparable for me to the X-Men. That's what this is. It's people are randomly having these mutations, and there's kind of like different opinions of like, are these mutants sad? Are they dangerous? Should we all want to kill them? Should we, live with them? What should we do? Should we put them out of their misery? Like, is there sympathy? Is there not? And then that sort of like furthers the ideas of like, oh, is this something that if you realize it's happening to you, do you have to hide it? And it's like, okay, all of a sudden this is a parallel for, anything like that, like being in the closet, or there's definitely a big part in this that made me think of the like sort of, the idea of like being too embarrassed to admit that you've got maybe a medical condition, and you're kind of there's a character in the movie who has ADHD, I think she said, and she specifically kind of like sympathizes with some things that the critters are going through, because she remembers like how frustrated she was before she actually got diagnosed and didn't understand why certain things were happening. And I was like, that really kind of drags this into sort of like thinking about how we all react and consider and talk about these types of issues, and especially when we consider things might be hereditary and things like that, and the idea of the fear of this sort of thing happening to us. Like, there was definitely all those ideas kind of like smushed in there.
For me, the part that I was kind of hitting on just in terms of human history, as much as you can get sort of that, anybody who's hiding who they truly are sort of thing. So you got, your closeted members of queer communities and stuff like that. But the one that was getting me specifically because of this like fear that the culture had was the AIDS epidemic. I think that this idea that, oh, anybody could have it, and once somebody has it, they are immediately shoved off, and just like they're tearing apart families, they're tearing apart these things when all they need is just like help and understanding at that point.
Certainly how we treat people who are sick, or how we treat people, like, do we just abandon them once they're considered like part of this broken sect that should be like, cordoned off from the rest of society? Like there's a lot of talk in this movie about sending the critters to this like hospital center, but it's like, is it actually nice in there, or is it basically just a concentration camp? Like we never see it. We never, it's just like a sort of idea that we hear about. But it really sounds like, we're just kind of putting them all in one place so we don't have to deal with them.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is that apparently this mutation, as established, has only been really happening for the past few years. So nobody knows what to do about it yet. There is no like cure. There's barely any research into what's going on. Everyone's just kind of scrambling of like, this guy turned into a lion and he ate his neighbor. How do we deal with that?
Yeah, there was in the opening scene, we get our first like glimpse of someone who has like the start of this mutation. I actually didn't know yet if this was like, is this the first time any of our main characters are seeing this?
It felt very Patient Zero.
Yeah. However, the next scene kind of established, not only do they know about it already, like they're already in, like their own loved one is already a victim of this, and they're off to see a doctor about it and stuff. So like it sets up really early on that no, this is something that's been going on for a little bit. But I almost thought at the start of the movie, no, we were starting with just the start. Then so is it going to be like a zombie movie almost, where this virus is spreading and people are turning into animals?
Right.
But
I mean, that would I think the concept would open itself up for that. Like if you wanted to set another movie in this universe that was like 4 years prior when it was first starting out, I think that you could easily set it up as a horror construct.
No, you could. When one character's turning into like a dog-like being, it's hard not to think of a werewolf. Like it's very in the same kind of vein in a lot of ways. So because keep in mind, it's not like there's a guy in this movie who's like got wings like a bird. It's not like he's shrinking down to bird size. He's still very much human height, but with bird features. So it's not like you become this thing, you shrink down to that size. So someone who turns into a wolf would look like a werewolf, basically.
Yeah, there's one. This is the other one that I couldn't tell what it was. It is a very slender, like very outstretched limbs. It almost reminded me of a stick bug.
Yeah, something, animal, some sort of big cricket or something. I don't know,
something like that. But again, human sized.
Yeah, it's human sized.
It's horrifying the fact that like this insect is this size.
It's probably like the eeriest shot of the whole movie because it's a nothing moment. There's just like one drunk guy walking home, and there's this thing walks behind him in the street, and it's just very eerie and like, whoa, okay. We almost turned into a horror movie there for a minute, because the rest of the movie doesn't really feel like that. It was really just one or two specific moments where,
honestly, the rest of the movie, I would say the best correlation would be a coming of age movie. It feels very much the idea of a character discovering who he is and getting through that.
Yeah, the teenage son, I think, is like it starts off feeling like the father's the main character, but the teenage son kind of becomes more the main character. Although the father's still very important to his story, of course, so he's still very heavily featured. But it definitely becomes more about him than it does about anyone else. Right. So, as far as anything else goes, I thought the score was quite pleasant. It's actually quite uplifting in places. It definitely goes for kind of there's a beauty here, and like part of accepting what these people are becoming and not being horrified by it is definitely one of the key themes and ideas, and the music kind of reflects that especially in some key moments. Absolutely goes into that. So yeah.
I'd say also we were talking about before the special effects, practical effects. I think that they do a good job for pretty much all the creatures, save for the ones where you really need it to be seen in its entirety, of keeping them at an arm's length. And that's doing a good job not only from the viewpoint of, okay, maybe these practical effects, maybe the way that these works aren't going to be perfect, so we're going to keep them a little bit distant and it's going to accentuate that. But it also works just thematically of, we're from a societal viewpoint, we're trying to keep all of these creatures at an arm's length. We're trying to keep them all separated from us. So having to always see them just a little bit away from everything else feels like it's setting a very specific mood and a tone with that.
Yeah. So I think we could probably get into spoilers here, so we can start talking about what the movie mainly does and everything else. So, you have been warned. Spoilers for the Animal Kingdom, but I mean, I guess we should probably say if we recommend it. I guess I kind of do. Like, I think it's worth watching. I think there's some good qualities to this, but I did come away at the end feeling like, okay, I like what that was trying to go for. But I don't necessarily think I left feeling super enthusiastic either, just purely because of the pacing issues and just feeling like it was a little bit of a slog at times to get through the whole thing.
Yeah, I definitely think that it is a movie that deserves attention. It's not just something to throw on in the background, but I agree that there is points in it where you kind of feel like we've been here, we've done this, or at the very least, this sequence has gone on too long. So by the time that once it hits what is definitely the third act, I think it keeps a pretty brisk pace and is solid to the end. There's maybe one or two places I would critique.
Yeah, it's the middle act that goes on for quite some time. And it, it can maybe kind of repeats a few beats with the father and the son a little bit. And there's just, I think that stuff you could have condensed down quite a bit. So, spoilers then for the Animal Kingdom, you have been warned. So, yeah, the movie's about the son who's also turning into a creature. That's ultimately what it becomes about. And because he's like kind of struggling with his ideas of how he feels about his mother. He's got a scar on his cheek because the reason why the mother was taken away from the house in the first place is because she scratched him. And that was okay, she's done something violent. She's not allowed to stay in the real world anymore. She has to go stay at a hospital where she's kind of locked up.
And it doesn't even feel like he's upset with the mom. It's that he realizes mom isn't there. Like there is no, like she's just a creature now at the beginning.
Yeah, because even when they move to the new town, and it's because this center where the mum's going to go stay at is located, they move to this new town and he goes into the class and he has a whole bit where he stands up in front of the class and the teacher's introducing him. And also, can I just say, is this this is not American, admittedly, but it's usually American movies that do this. This idea of like, oh, we've got a new student, so we're going to have them do like a Q&A for the class. That is mortifying. Who would do that to a new student? They're already nervous about a new school as it is.
I only moved once when I was a kid to a new school. I didn't have to do this, so it might just be the sort of like, TV makes you do that for exposition purposes. But yeah, no, never. Any teachers out there, don't do that to kids.
It's horrible.
You're not helping them.
It's horrible. That said, though, there is some, it's actually one of the better done versions of this because there's a couple of good little character beats that come out of it. One is that when he's asked about his mother, he says she's dead, which is interesting from a couple of advantages, actually. In one way, it's interesting because he's ashamed to admit what his mother is. So he's relying about that, and that tells you something about the character. But it also possibly suggests that he actually sees her that way. He considers her to be dead and gone, and that's also interesting. So either way you want to read that, it tells you something about his character, and that's quite fascinating.
I also think it says quite a bit about the world they're in at that point, where it feels like he says it almost reflexively of like normal people, the average person he talks to is not going to be okay with him being the child of a critter. Like it would be something that would be met with a bit of pushback.
So you've got that, and then you've also got the moment here where his love interest, Nina, asks some questions, and she kind of gets a little too like inquisitive, almost like she's interrogating him in front of the class, where she kind of says, well, she's like, what do your parents do? And he's like, oh, my dad's a cook. What does your mum do? Like she insists on the answer on him, and he goes like, my mum's dead. And then everyone gets awkward, and she kind of like quietens up, but then she stands up as he's sitting down and says, hey, Emil, new kid, I am sorry, I have ADHD, and sometimes I say things with blurting them out, and it was actually kind of oddly sweet having her stand up and apologize and say, hey, I've got a condition. And it also just is a nice contrast. Not only does it set up who her character is, and is it nice exposition to tell you what she has, but this idea that she's open about it and honest about it tells you that she's accepted that she has this condition, and it, she's willing to just communicate about it and to have someone understand why she's maybe acted a little out of the ordinary or done something that's made someone feel uncomfortable. And I thought that made her kind of endearing in the moment as well. But
I definitely felt that same endearing moment. It definitely felt like they were trying to make her seem to be a more lighthearted character, someone that he can relate to over the course of this. But I do think maybe it's just a cultural difference. Her standing up like that, just being like, I have ADHD and I apologize if I have hurt you. Like, I don't know, a lot of this movie, because it is so focused on these teenage relationships, I'm just sitting here feeling a lot of secondhand cringe of like, oh God, they're so awkward. They're so like, please stop.
I didn't really feel it for this one. I thought this wasn't, because I sort of took this as like everyone in the class knows she has ADHD and they just all understand why she's doing this and why she's saying it this way, and they kind of just laugh it off and it's fine. It felt like she's been accepted with this condition, which is kind of makes contrast nicely with how everyone's not accepted the critter thing. And to be fair, turning into an animal is a bit more extreme than having a slight, mental issue.
I would love that. I would love that conversation. They don't have it at the end of the movie, but I would love that conversation between her and Emile of just like, no, I understand what you're going through. I have ADHD. It's like, okay, you don't though.
I'm growing fangs and I've got hair coming out of all the... I had to laugh though, because like I swear his hairy wolf back, it was like as hairy as my back actually is, and I'm like, this isn't that hairy, guys.
Now hold on, everybody. Let's try to actually make this unrealistic, okay?
Like, I'm just saying, someone who is a hairy man is just as hairy, in some cases much hairier than any of the body hair that he has when they're showing... Like, his spine obviously looks weird. He's got like a weird spine sticking out.
Yeah.
That sort of thing going on. But the hair, the quote-unquote fur, yeah, all right, I've got that beat. Nice try, though. Nice try.
He would be brought into the center, and he's just screaming like, no! I'm just Harry.
Because later on, when they're having sex in the cornfield or whatever it is, and she's like touching his back, and she's like, I knew, and I'm like, that is just a hairy back. Like, you don't know shit.
To be fair, I think she was feeling like the bumps on the spine. I know, but I don't think it was specifically the hair.
I just love the idea of getting intimate with a woman, and she'd be like, oh, Peter, I knew that you were secretly turning into a wolf, and I'm like, I'm just hairy. What are you talking about?
Oh God, that would be such a good like parody movie. Just do a full-on Wolfman remake, but it turns out the Wolfman is actually just a really hairy guy, but the woman is so into the concept of it. It's like, no, I know the full moon's done this.
Yeah, it's more of a fetish on her part. She's just got like a weird werewolf kink. That's what it is.
Exactly. And that's okay. So I'm only going to bring this up once here, and I'm not going to bring it up again. It's nothing like that. There were so many bits in this movie, especially when we start talking about like the creatures and their relationships with like Francois, the father. He talks at one point about like once the mother started turning, they tried to keep their relationship still a bit normal despite like the changes going on until it was completely untenable. There were several points in this movie where I got very furry vibes. And that's not to say anything about the movie itself. It's not to say anything about the furry community, but that is to say there is a specific vibe here every once in a while, and especially that sex in the cornfield moment. I'm like, you have a very specific DeviantArt account, young lady, and I know exactly what's on it.
I mean, okay, it's easy to joke about, but I do kind of like the idea that she recognized he was discovering he was going through something, and she was actually sympathetic, and that's why... Right. They had such chemistry is because she could kind of sympathize with him, because she kind of catches him struggle to ride his bike early on, because that's like one of the first big things that he can't do anymore. Like his regular human motor skills are starting to kind of deteriorate, and he ends up like abandoning his bike and whatnot, and his dad finds it. His dad actually figures out that what's going on, because his dad doesn't know about it for a long time until later in the film, but it's finding the bike that sort of starts to clue him in that he's been lying about stuff. But she sees that he's struggling, and kind of that's when she brings up, when I first started having these symptoms and I didn't know what they were, it was really frustrating because I didn't know why it was happening. It was really scary. And that being diagnosed and accepting like what you are goes a long way to sort of making peace with it and sort of learning to live and deal with it and maybe even embrace it. And that's very much the story of him in this movie. Is the idea that he starts with like being scared of his mother, who's a critter, like not wanting to admit that he's got anything to do with a critter, joining in when everyone else is sort of saying that I mean, not everyone hates the critters. There's the one like activist guy in the school who's like making t-shirts and like he's like saying, no, we should cohabitate, blah blah blah. But there's some of the other ones like, we should just kill them. We should just, and he has to sit and listen to all this, and he never speaks up, he never says it. And to be fair, the dad has the same thing as well. The dad at his job, like the guy he works for, is just constantly saying, yeah, critters are awful. I'm going to make t-shirts saying we should kill them. And he just kind of has to sit there and like, bear it and just not
He can't
interject.
out himself, yeah.
Yeah, so like I think that's like the main thrust of the movie is him ultimately becoming to accept what he is, and that discovery of him befriending another critter and helping the other critter, with his wings. That we'll get to that, and going from there on to what he does afterwards, and kind of getting to the point where he, wants to embrace it more and starts to act out a little bit more, and it's. That combined with the father looking, because the father even admits at one point that he doesn't know, because one of the big plot points we've not mentioned yet early on is that the transport vans for the critters that were bringing them to the center from the other city, the one that the mother was in actually during the storm went off this sort of road into the lake, and some of the critters that were on there are dead, and the rest are all missing. So he's freaking out.
Yeah, it was like a single, I would call it like a prison bus-esque sort of transport.
Yes.
They had like 40 apparently on this one bus. That seems ridiculous to me when they're all various different shades of animal as well. They're not just sitting peacefully in a chair.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how they were all shackled up inside there so they weren't causing chaos. But so she's missing for most of the movie, and he ends up kind of befriending this young female detective, or well, not even detective, but like National Guard, I think was the technically the term she used.
Yeah, they used it was not translated from the French. So whatever the French terminology was, that's what they used.
Yeah, so like I wasn't sure how to take this character, because I wasn't sure if they were going down a path where she was going to be some kind of like younger love interest for the dad, and she never became that. Yeah. It never was that, but she never really had like an ending to her character either. So it kind of felt like, if there was something more to her, it kind of got lost somewhere, other than just she's there to kind of like advance the dad's side of the story a little bit and help him occasionally.
Yeah. I will say, from what I read, there was apparently in the original cut of this movie a 2-minute epilogue that basically just wraps up a bunch of stuff and answers a bunch of questions, but they cut it because they were like, let's leave stuff ambiguous. Let's leave it up to the audience of how does this all end.
To be fair, the moment it ends on is the moment to end on, because it's like the emotional like send off for the movie. So I think that was probably the right choice, because it's not even like I have questions remaining really at the end. Not
but I think that's probably where you would get the wrap up for that character, would probably be in that epilogue.
So he actually spends a lot of his own plot in the early half of the movie, like looking for his wife, who's transformed more. So he's not even exactly sure what she's going to look like now, and he's looking, and we get like a whole incident where he's in like the supermarket, and some of the other critters that have been kind of like running around end up in there, and we see like a kid who's like got squid tentacles like coming out their t-shirt or whatever. So that was a visual.
It's such a creative like I was gonna say monster, but like such a creative creature, because that's the time that they really show the creature in its entirety. And they're showing him just flailing around items as he's running down the supermarket aisles, and it looks very well done.
Yeah, and there's a moment where he's searching with Julia, the policewoman, and they kind of have to hide because there's like, other cops, because they're not really supposed to be in this forest. It's kind of forbidden, but she's kind of helping him anyway.
Yeah, and they say that the local police have basically been taken off, and the military is coming in to help find these things.
So he has this moment where he kind of breaks down, and he says he doesn't know what he's more scared of, not finding his wife or finding her. This idea that maybe it's better for her at this point to let her go, that she is in some ways dead, like the wife he had is gone, and this creature deserves to just be free or whatever. And like, so it's kind of like him wrestling with what he actually thinks about critters, because like, it's almost like he's just by default wanted to just protect his wife, which is understandable and makes sense, and it's sympathetic, but at a certain point, he's maybe having to consider, but she's changed so much now. Like, do I have any sort of claim to try and keep her locked up just so I can go see her? That kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely feels like there's this underlying subtext of, why the caged bird sings. This idea of he knows that she's turning into a more feral, wild animal, but he wants to keep her locked up for his own somewhat selfish reasons. Whereas that's not something that she would want at this point. She would want to continue to be free. So he has to slowly come to terms with that. And that also influences, once he discovers about his son, letting him go, where he's been very protective of him this whole time.
Oh, yeah.
Making sure that he's not found out.
Once he knows what his son's going through, he's basically like, hey, we have to keep this a secret. We have to clip your nails every day. We have to, like, you know, shave you every day. We have to do all these things. And it's like, okay, so he's being super protective. And the son's all about it, because this is the thing. The son starts off wanting to hide it. He doesn't want to even tell his father. He hides it as much as he can. The first sign where he kind of realizes, oh, wait, I've maybe starting to change, is he's at school, and he's been told to do a tug of war in gym class, and all of his teammates all let go of the rope and fall down, but he's able to, like, take on the rest of the team on his own. So he's clearly like stronger than he should be, and then he looks down at his hands and he can sort of see the first, you know, claw kind of coming in under his nail. So we get this whole thing, and this is actually the moment I was referring to earlier, when he pulls out that claw with the tweezers or whatever it is. And he makes this shrieking noise where he just sounds like so in pain. I'm like, you know what, kid? And by this I mean the actor. You sold me on that pain. You just sold me on how painful that was.
Yeah, no, I'm not one that has a whole lot of stuff that I get squick from in terms of like, oh God, no, I can't watch that. But ripping out something like that is embedded in your fingernails like that, that's on that level for me. I don't think that going back and watching that scene, and we find out later, he continuously does it. This isn't something where he did it once and then it like stopped growing. Like, this is something that they keep growing in and he keeps pulling them out. I'm glad we only had the one sequence.
Oh yeah.
Because I think if this was something that he had to keep on doing, I would eventually just be like, I'm just going to skip this part.
We don't have to see it every time. We can just get a taste of it, and then he can, you know, do it off camera from then on. That's totally fine. But even when this is all happening and he's kind of having to hide things a bit more and more, he's also getting closer to this girl. In fact, one of the awkward things that happens when he's invited to a party earlier on in this process is that, you know, he's hanging around people, he's drinking, he's whatever, and he's sitting at the table with her and her kind of friends. I say that because some of them are kind of dickheads, but like they're doing...
It's an even split where there's two of them that like are really against the critters.
Yes.
And like one of them just makes up stories of like, oh, I found one and they were disgusting. And the other one is actually like violent. Whereas the other two are her and then one guy who's, you know, starting up that activism front and saying like, oh yeah, no, we should work with them, cohabitate. And
the activist guy also does sword fights. That's just like a weird character thing we know about him.
Hey man, yeah. If he were in America, it'd be Civil War reenactments. He's that kind of guy.
Yes, what is this, French Revolution reenactments? Is that what he's doing?
Something like that. They were talking about St. John's Day, which I don't know. I'm sure that's some actual holiday, but I don't know anything about it.
Oh, I have no idea. No. No. Yeah, I actually laughed at one point because the dad's like a cook for a living, and he mentions at one point, I won't be home for dinner, but I made lasagna. And I went, that's Italian! You're French! like
lasagna has transcended borders. It could be anywhere.
I suppose it has. Anyway, so they've been drinking and whatnot, and Emile, our main character, starts to get a little bit sick. And like, oh, he's wasted, he's whatever, blah, blah, blah. And what's her name? Nina. Nina. The love interest girl, says, hey, you know, take this and put it under your tongue. I don't even know what I don't drink, so I don't know what she's giving him, but she's giving him something to help with the sickness.
The nausea, right.
Yeah. And instead of taking it out of her hand, he just leans down and licks it off her hand and then licks up her arm. And everyone just sort of sits there kind of in shock. And like one of the guys just cracks a joke. He's like, oh, wow, he's went straight to like horn dog or whatever. And she's just sort of sitting there kind of like, I mean, they've had some chemistry, but nothing's happened yet. And he's just done this. So she's kind of like a little violated. Like that was a big extreme. Well,
that was, what was the bit earlier? I can't remember what the reasoning was, but there was a bit where he like, oh, she's wearing, after he leaves the party, she's wearing a necklace that has a bird feather on it. Yeah. But she specifically yells out at one point as he like looks at the necklace, sees the bird feather, like, where did you get that? Where did you find it? She yells out, hey, don't touch me. Don't touch people without their permission. So obviously she does have a little bit of a like, please no sort of vibe to it still. Like, it's not something where she was into it.
Yeah, no, I mean, because he's definitely like taking these weird leaps. I almost think though that this like just reaching over and touching the necklace wouldn't have been a big deal if it wasn't for the previous licking incident. Yeah. I think the licking incident put her on edge because that was actually clearly over a line and weird and all other things. So,
but I do think that is where she starts thinking about it. She's like, something's not right about you. And in this world, if there's something not right about you, it's probably this one very specific thing.
Yeah, but still though, they end up like hanging out. She invites him over to like, this is after the whole bike bit where he can't ride the bike, and she invites him over. She plays her, I think amusingly, it's a French horn for him.
They call it a horn over there, but yes.
I don't know if they do. I don't think they do.
Probably not. It's probably got some extra special term.
No. But, you know, they bond, you know, they have she has like a dead bird in her fridge, which he asks about, and she's like, oh, I feel like it was sitting there outside after the party, which I think
it was on my front porch. Someone left it as a gift.
Well, yes, the implication being him, because he coughed up a feather. But he doesn't remember doing it, I don't think. So that's kind of what they're going for. Right. So it's like, okay, they're developing this relationship. These like moments are happening, but there's also this like danger that he's going to do something weird in front of people, or he's going to whatever. And I think maybe we return to that well just a little too many times, where we go back to him in school, and I'm just like, oh, we don't need to see another example of him doing another little weird thing.
I think I would have been fine with it if any of the characters were reacting in any way, but it's like they brush it off every single time. If I were to, like, if they had really dove into this fact that he's starting to alienate his classmates because of that, and so you can get into this idea of this sort of self-isolation, but then Nina is remaining that bridge of someone he can connect with, I think it would have worked overall. But every time he does something weird, everyone's like, huh, new kid, right? And then they just continue on.
Yeah, there's a scene where he spits up a tooth in the cafeteria, and I was like, we didn't need that scene. That just felt like it was an extra thing that we'd already had these moments where he did something weird in front of them. So we had that, but we also have over this part of the movie where he starts to like go into, because I think the first time he's searching in the woods with his dad for the missing mum, they encounter this Fix character. This is the Birdman, who was also in the opening scene, but now he's got 2 full wings, right? He's developed, and he does kind of attack Emil. He kind of like stabs him with his claw, his talon in the shoulder, which, you know, there's a whole bit where he gets that patched up. But when Emil runs back into the forest after he's sort of starting to come to a little bit of terms of like what he is, he kind of like goes back to Fix and tries to like give him something to eat. He brings him some fish. In fact, he actually catches the fish with his bare hands like a dog would or a wolf would.
Yeah.
And
like he's just diving his head underwater and coming up and just like, yeah, this is awesome. I love it.
And there's this old woman catches them doing it, and he just kind of gives her a thumbs up, like, yeah, I'm having a good day. Like, but no, he offers this fish. Fix tells him to piss off, basically. Fix also hangs out with a young girl critter who is like some sort of lizard based creature.
Fix calls her Froggy, but then he makes the point of saying like, it's a lizard, a chameleon, or something like that. It's not a
frog,
amphibian.
But yeah, Froggy's the name we've got, so that's what we're going to go with. But basically, we find out, and we even see a little bit in this scene, that Fix is trying to fly. He's got wings, and he's trying to like take off. So he's jumping and hurting himself, basically. And Emil offers a suggestion and says, "Hey, you're going to hurt yourself if you keep doing it here. Why not go somewhere? I know somewhere a bit more discreet where you can sort of like not get hurt because there's water." And they go, so he's like, okay, and he takes him to this little lake or whatever it is, and is like, hey, I'm going to impale myself. There's like branches all over the water, and Emil's like, hey, they're just branches. I'll take care of it. So he jumps in the water and starts clearing the entire lake for him.
I love that this is him simultaneously being helpful for Fix, but also he's a dog collecting sticks in water. Like, he's like, yes, I love this. This is perfect for me.
He's like someone who like really likes spreadsheets and really gets into Excel. He's like, oh, I love this. This is like dopamine, just clicking the cells, lining things up. I'm not that bad. Come on now.
No, fair enough.
No. So like, yeah, but it's this idea that he's helping this other person who seemed kind of scary at first, but isn't, right? Someone who's sympathetic and is only angry at everyone who comes near him because everyone's mistreated him. But because Emil shows some kindness and tries to help, and even encourages him, you know, because he tries to fly again, and it doesn't work. He falls in the water. You know, there's a lot of failed attempts, but it kind of feels kind of hopeful. It feels like, hey, he's encouraging him. He's there for him. There's a sweetness to the whole thing.
Yeah. That's I'd say the only time it's an actual, it's very heartfelt and sweet, but it's almost a comedy moment as well. Of you just get this montage of him falling into the lake over and over again. I don't think any other moment in the movie is played for that like laugh. Everything else is very much either this hopeful tone of, oh, we can do it, we'll find a way, or this somber, oh god, the world is against us.
Yeah, and then it's I don't think it's the end of the montage. I think it's another scene that comes a little bit later where he actually does take off a little bit, and we actually get a shot of him flying in the sky. And it was actually maybe one of the few moments where I felt the CG showed itself a little bit, but I kind of get that, okay, you've actually got someone flying and sort of doing like a barrel roll like in the sky. It's a bit more over the top than all the other stuff. But it, you know, it held up well enough. Like I was like, you know what, it still worked, still looked pretty good. So that's going on as well as all the other stuff, and then that kind of takes us to the other like half of his like story, which is once the dad finds out, and then that kind of becomes the focus from then on.
Because his dad is, I don't want to say very loose with him. His dad is constantly on him about one thing or another, but he's a very, I don't know, he's not a strict parent, I guess is the best way. He's not a helicopter parent. He does let his son go off and do whatever. It
feels like he's a decent enough parent, but he's also really distracted with the search for the wife, so he's not maybe paying as much attention as he should be.
Right.
That's the vibe I got.
And then up until the point where he finds out about like what's going on, you know, his son is like, oh, I lost my bike out in the woods. Oh, I was just hanging out with friends. He's coming home late, but the dad doesn't really seem to care that much. And then it's only once the sink is clogged and he sees what's clogging it, and he noticed a hell of a lot of fur and some of the claws that he's been pulling out from under his fingernails. And then he confronts the son. And from that point on, he becomes full helicopter parent of like, you've got 2 more weeks at school. If you can just last that long, then we can take you out and no one ever has to know. And we'll just make this work because I don't want to send you away as well.
Yeah, so it becomes this protective thing where someone is now telling him you have to hide this, when, you know, the more heartfelt right thing, even if people are going to react badly, is that no, you should be free to be who you are, kind of.
And that's kind of what he's learning from Fix. Like that's the whole point of those segments of seeing him fly, is like, oh, look what happens if you just embrace who you are and you don't try to hide it. You can literally soar.
Because Fix even has a line at one point, like, I need to fly. I can't be a bird that doesn't fly. What's the point of that? So, like, he's very determined to pull that off. So, like, the stuff with the dad, like, I think works fairly well. Like, this idea of him getting more frustrated and getting upset that his son is maybe taking more risks than he should, and, like, not showing up to, like, his, like, little part-time job for the diner thing. Because there's, like, a big fair towards the end where the third act kind of kicks off. But that's, like, he shows up late to that, and that's when the dad ends up confronting him, and they have this fight where, like, he ends up biting his dad, and then his dad holds, like, a blade to his son's neck, and it really feels like a sort of pivotal moment of, like, oh, like, he's just realized that he almost had to, like, hurt his son in defense, and, like, how do I feel about these? Because one of the other things the dad's got going is that there's another woman that works with him who, it turns out, like, has a sister who's a critter, and she's a lot more sympathetic, and so he sort of finds like an ally, even though he never confides in her, he never tells her that his wife's one.
Yeah,
he still like clearly feels comfortable when this woman starts talking about these things and sees someone who can relate to his experiences.
Yeah, during one of the nights at the restaurant, the one guy, the father goes back into the back area because he thinks he hears something, and in doing so, he not only sees his wife, who was too far away, managed to escape, but also gets jumped by a giant sea lion critter. And this one's like fully evolved, fully transformed. And as he's trying to fight against it, trying to hold his own, he does get pushed down. It doesn't seem like it's violent, but it does seem like it's like a bull in a china shop situation where it would be too strong and might accidentally hurt him just because it's lumbering about. And that's where the woman comes in. And it gives you this beat of, oh no, this woman who's with this man that I know is against critters, just saw this critter, it's going to get hurt now. She just tries to calm it down, tries to help it escape properly, and because of a bunch of other stuff going on, it does end up accidentally rampaging through the restaurant, and everyone freaks out. But she's absolutely revealed to be on the side of, we need to treat them with compassion because I have my own connection to them. It's this thing where it's, you know, you don't understand how much it's important until it personally affects you.
And because it wrecks a bunch of these outdoor tables and chairs at this little diner that this you know, critterist, racist guy owns, it just gives him more fuel for why he's part of this militia in the third act that wants to go hunt when they find out there's a critter about. So yeah, like, I think some things that made sense to me toward, you know, like at a certain point in this movie is that part of this, obviously it's a self-discovery thing for Emil, but also it makes sense that he actually is going to maybe have some kind of closure with his mum. And that does happen, where once he's in the woods after, we'll talk about what happens at the fair, but he does end up running into the creature that his mum is, and they kind of understand who each other are. It's kind of a sweet moment. You know, it's a moment where they kind of are able to just kind of accept who each other are, and it feels like something he needed, because that's kind of how we started the movie. To be fair, there's a lot of that in this movie where it kind of mirrors the beginning, because even like the final scene in the car, the movie starts with the father and son in a car, and they're kind of miserable at the start of the movie. They're kind of arguing and bickering about things. He's telling them, don't eat potato chips.
They're trapped in traffic. They're literally self-confined in this human world, and then the end comes back and it's a full freedom release thing. But
it's like, yeah, obviously you've got the visual of them driving through the what was the word I'm looking for? The
woods, forest,
the open, the country. That's what I meant to say, the country, right?
Oh, okay.
They're driving through the country, right? Whereas they're not jumping traffic. But for me, what I was getting at though was more just their tones. When this scene at the end, the final scene when they're in the car, they're both smiling, right? They're happy. They're bonding. They've found like an inner peace with each other, and it's a complete 180 from the start of the movie. I did think it maybe got a little too on the nose though when they brought up the potato chips again, like, you know, the crisps, because I was like, okay, I already get that you're mirroring the start of the movie. You don't have to actually bring up the thing that you talked about there, just to like. It kind of won me over a little bit though when the dad grabbed a handful and just ate them, to basically say, what the hell? We can't be that strict on ourselves all the time. Live a little. And I know it's weird to say munching a handful of crisps is a symbolic moment like that at the end of a movie, but it kind of is because of how the movie started.
Yeah, no, it's the father's arc here, we already said, was this idea of his battling his hypocrisy, where he wants his wife to be happy, and obviously that, but he's got this selfishness to him of keeping him back. And the other thing we get for his character throughout is that he is the type that's constantly against the system. Like, he hates authority, he's always going up against it, but whenever it's something that would help him out, he's like, yeah, all right, we'll go ahead and go with that. Like there's one point after he discovers his son is, you know, growing fur and stuff like that, needs to shave it off. He gets some hair removal cream, and he's like, all right, apply this liberally and it'll get the hair to just pop right off. And the son makes the comment of like, I thought you were completely protesting these specific chemicals or whatever. And he's like, yeah, well, that's a different case. That's something else. Yeah. So I feel like by the time...
It's just another example at the start of the movie when they're talking to the doctor. The doctor's saying, oh, well, we have to take her to the center, you know, we'll figure out what's going on with her, where, you know, there's been a lot of advancements. And the dad kind of just sort of nods and agrees and says, that sounds positive. And Emil chimes in and says, wait, you said the doctors are quacks and they didn't know what they were doing. So just another example of him speaking against these things, but then kind of just buckling to them the second that, you know, might be something he can benefit him.
When you get to the end, it's this turning point for him where he realizes, okay, yes, that was all hypocritical. I need to, like, fully embrace this. I need to basically give in to what my ideals actually are here. And that's why he goes in and he's like, yeah, no, the chips aren't really a big deal. So he eats the chips, and then they go into letting the son go free, obviously.
Yeah, that's the end of the movie, which is him making sure his son is not going to be held captive and not go to the center and instead roam free in the woods like the animal he's become. Which, you know, it's a nice ending. It ends in the exact right point that it should. I think the character arc for both characters makes a lot of sense to me. It's just the journey to get there is just a little bit longer than I think I would have liked. And I just... it does feel a little bit strenuous at this point. That said, though, once it gets to the fair and things really start to kick off, so he has the night with Nina, where she kind of says she already kind of figured it out, but she still wants to be with him, and it's kind of sweet in that regard. But of course, the dickhead in the friend group kind of saw them and has realized what he is. And one of the things that the diner guy was handing out, like, is like a free thing for people at the fair, were these like ultrasonic devices that like make animals go nuts because it's like a loud, high pitched thing that we can't hear, but it makes them go crazy. Yeah, basically a dog whistle. And this guy starts using it on Emile, and Emile like ends up like launching him through like the wall, like in kind of like a moment of animalistic rage.
He slashes his face, which obviously the guy starts freaking out about. Everyone's like, "Oh, he's been attacked. We have to go hunt down whatever that critter is that caused it." And then immediately Nina.
It's funny we were comparing it to like a werewolf or a wolfman earlier, because this becomes the lynch mob hunting the monster here. Effectively,
there's so much of this that's just that slow transformation, like the first night transformation thing over the course of the whole movie, and then this is the mob coming out to attack the creature that ruined their crops, essentially.
Yeah. So I mean, we get the chase. The dad's very concerned. Nina's very concerned. I guess that's the other thing that felt maybe a little bit missing, is maybe Nina deserves something as well. And again, maybe that would be something that would be in the epilogue thing that was cut. But it kind of feels like, maybe she at least deserves to know that he's okay, at the end.
Yeah, it again, not knowing what the epilogue was, my image of what it would be is fast forward 6 months later, you see things have adjusted, things have changed, maybe public perception has started to change a little bit, but you see the policewoman, Julia, I believe it was.
Yes.
The father and Nina all just hanging out at the father's house, maybe at the restaurant, something like that. And there's a rustle in the woods, and they all just like look over and smile and know that it's him or something. Just something to show that there is still this continuity and everyone has managed to get along more or less.
Yeah, just because the last we see of her, I think, is her just looking concerned as everyone's running off with guns and whatnot. But this actually leads to, like, he does get away effectively and is able to dodge the mob. But part of what lets him get away is we get a big set piece sequence where Fix comes in to kind of save the day because he's running through like a crop field of some kind, and like Fix comes in and like picks up one of the lynch mob and like drops them, and it's like a big thing where it's like, oh, he's made this friend that he has made who was like aggressive towards him has become this like ally who comes in to save him. But the tragic ending to this though is because he's such an easy target in the sky, one of the lynch mob shoots him down. So Fix dies, and it's a really sort of tragic, like sad scene of like the friend is, is gone kind of thing. I just have to bring up this one visual because it's such a striking visual, but I, for the life of me, can't figure out like the symbolic intent behind it. Because they're at the fair, there's a bunch of people on stilts, and they're making their way through the crop field, and like they are towering over it. They're a good like 3-4 feet up higher than all of the crops. So you just see them going through it. And it's a very striking visual to see, these looming figures over the top of all the crops that seem almost inhuman within their own right. But like, I'm not sure what it's really getting across there. I got to call out the visual because it is a very good one. I don't know, maybe there's something to the idea of like humans are obsessed with like being more than human, but the second it happens naturally, we all like recline in horror and like, no, you're different now. But that idea of like, no, we like to pretend to be taller, like, unhumanly tall. We like to pretend to be, animalistic and like, oh, I'm a beast, I'm a man beast. But the second someone actually turns into a beast, oh no, you're a freak, we have to kill you. Like,
I was going to say, isn't Emile technically the epitome of alpha male? He turns into a wolf. Absolutely.
I think it ties back into that hypocrisy we've been talking about a little bit with the dad, with Francois. So, I think that stuff is interesting. Obviously, Emile runs into the mom and he has this night in the woods, but eventually, though, because I was almost thinking, is the movie just going to end with him like living in the woods now with all these other creatures he runs into? Because we see
it seems like a good ending point there. Like if it ended there, it wouldn't be wrapping up plot lines, but it seems like a finality
because we see like other creatures that are clearly used to be human that are kind of like these mutations, and he seems kind of happy to be around them. It's almost like they're starting to build their own little community in the forest. But then the military comes in, and we literally get them smoked out, where there's like these smoke grenades coming in, they're being like driven out of their homes, and they're going to be killed. And they ultimately do find him, but because he still looks human, because all the parts that are animalistic are kind of covered by clothes, he kind of gets away with just, oh, you're just trespassing, you're just a human that's not meant to be here. And we get this sequence where, because even like the policeman who like wants to write this report up is like, I'm just going to save his time. You didn't mean to be in there. You were just like trespassing. Just sign this thing, and that's it. Slap on the wrist. No big deal. We've got too much to deal with. But of course, at this point, Emil's so kind of turned, he can't sign the paper, and he ends up ripping it. And when the guy like tries to lean in, he grills at him, and he realizes, oh wait, you're a critter. And this is the moment where the dad kind of makes his big face turn, and because up until this moment, the dad's like, yeah, sign the paper. Let's do what they say so we can get out of here. But the dad just sort of jumps into action and knocks the guy out and says, look, I'll stamp it myself. We'll leave and try and get away quick enough so that we can get a head start. And that leads to the end of the movie where he lets him go in the forest.
Yeah. That's also the last moment we get Julia. As she looks over like forlornly at the car and is like, oh, something's going on there, but that's a them thing. I'm not going to get involved, I guess. No, I really do like this moment, but it kind of feels like specifically this moment should have been earlier. It feels like, as much as I like you said, I like every scene that we had in this movie, but it just feels like all of this stuff that we were doing, because this is pretty much the start. Well, I don't know if I'd say it's the start of third act. I would say that Fair is the start of third act, but this is the start of like the climax, the very end of the movie.
Oh yeah, the entire Fair stuff is the third act for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But I just if
not the start of the Fair stuff, then certainly by the time that the dickhead like confronts him and outs him as a critter, that's definitely where the third act really kicks in.
So I don't know, in structure wise where you would say this is, but the moment where he knocks out the cop and then we go on this final run back out into the woods, I like the moment. It just feels like it should have been a little bit sooner. It just feels like we did too much before then, and it kind of lessened the impact a little bit.
It's kind of back to the pacing a little bit, where I think all these decisions make sense. I do like how it mirrors the opening scene. I do like the final choice. I mean, I think for Julia, it's not even like I need a big plot beat for her. I just think, because at the end, when Emil's running off into the forest, it does cut back to the dad watching, and you see the cop cars pull up kind of just a little bit behind him. I was kind of thinking, oh, why doesn't she run up and like just sort of look on next to him? And not so much in a sense that she's going to completely approve of what he's just done or completely disapprove, but just this idea that she's at least aware of the choice that he's made, so that she has, so the character has a moment to understand what he's just done, would have been enough of an ending for her, I think, because she has been just a sort of, ancillary character for his side of the plot. But likewise, something like that for Nina would have also made some amount of sense. But because there's other little cute scenes that we kind of glossed over. Like there's one moment where the flirtation with Nina is like ramping up, but we're not at the fair yet, and he goes out into like just the middle of a field or the woods, and says, he's on the phone to her, and he says, hey, I'm going to yell, see if you can hear me. And he kind of howls, this idea that he's howling at the moon. And
it starts off as a yell and then very quickly evolves to end in a howl.
Yes. And then she's like, I couldn't hear anything, I'll try. And I was thinking, oh, maybe we'll hear it with him because he's got increased hearing. That's one of the points that they've made, is that his hearing, he's wearing like earbuds right now because it's like dampening the sound because everything's too much to take. Because that's actually one of the other things he freaks out about at school, is that at one point they're in like biology class and there's like hamsters or something making too much noise in a cage, and he freaks out and like yells. He's like, shut the F up! And everyone's like, whoa, dude, calm down.
In fairness, if I was sat next to that ferret cage and they were making that much squeaking, like, I'm sure it was accentuated for the sake of the movie, but like, God, I would have lasted maybe like 10 minutes tops. I'd be like, can I step out? This is annoying.
Yeah. And
the one moment that I enjoyed was him and Nina in Nina's house just after they revealed the dead bird in the fridge. His senses are starting to peak a little bit, and he's just, it's the first flirtation, really, where he's just like, I like the way you smell. And she's like, what? I haven't even taken a shower. I stink. And he's like, but I like it.
Yeah, he's like, I think that's what I like. I think I like how you smell naturally.
Yeah.
He's the mating call's getting put out there a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, the thing that it does focus on for its final scenes is absolutely the most important things it should focus on. There's just a couple of the side characters feel like they deserve. To be fair, it's more Nina than Julia. Julia is not as important as the character as Nina is, but it would be nice to like give her a little bit of closure.
Yeah, that being said, I think I wanted more for Julia as well, because you get this vibe that she is understanding while also in the position from a job perspective where she has to crack down. She has to be able to do this.
Do you know what it almost felt like? It almost felt like it was setting up for a moment where she was going to have to like choose to let him go at the end, and like sort of like not so much that she'd throw her job away, but she would just sort of like turn the other way and be like, go, like give her that agency to make that choice. At the end.
Easiest way to wrap this up is she's standing outside the door when the assault of the police officer happens. And rather than him stamping it himself, she sees what happens, stamps it for them, and then lets him go.
Yeah, just give her this moment where she has an impact on this final beat, where her choice lets them get away. That would have completed her character. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, I think there's things to nitpick with that. My big thing though is probably is just pacing for the most part, and just a general sense that I kind of appreciate what it's doing more than I like am enjoying or feeling engaged with it. Like it's almost like it's a little bit at a distance where I'm like, okay, I like this choice, I like how they've done this bit, I like how this looks. There's lots of things I like, but there's just a slight disconnect where I'm just not like super like engaged in with it, you know? Like I'm just not feeling it quite fully, and I don't really even know if I've tried to explain it the best I can. I don't even know if there is like a solid reason where it's crossing over from being something I just actually love and something where I just kind of appreciate but don't feel that much for. But it's somewhere in the middle of that, and I don't really know why, other than maybe just what I've said. But
yeah, I think that's kind of what I was saying at the beginning of what I would have wanted, is this more perspective on how the world is reacting, or just different perspectives of stuff. We get one line from the father saying, look at what they're doing in Norway. It's not this crackdown stuff. They're living in cohabitation. They're living in peace. And that one line got me more interested in what was going on in this specific world than most anything else that was going on, because being so insular, being so focused on the smaller village, it kind of felt hard for me to feel like this is something that has this larger impact. It feels like it is very much kept in this tiny bubble. I think if you had said like even just small things like a news report that says the US has done this, or Great Britain has locked its borders. I mean, that's every other Thursday for you guys, but still, I think that it's something where I would be a bit more attached to what's going on, because it feels like this is impacting the world that I live in as well, rather than this is something that's impacting just this tiny village in France that we never see the outside of.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of mixed on that, because I do think it would have to be small little hints at the greater world, because I do think the focus is a good thing overall. Like I did like that line about Norway, just this idea of like maybe teasing or hinting at what the rest of the world's doing with this. I think is fine, but I do think the focus in making it a character movie first is the right choice. I just think it needed to be reined in a little bit and tightened up for the most part. It's kind of, yeah, I don't know, like in a weird way, is there maybe just parts of it that are just a little on the dry side? Is that my problem? Is there just a couple of too many scenes where the dad talking about the mum or whatever, it just feels a little bit too much of like a dry TV drama, as opposed to something that's really like pulling me in and making me think about what this world is. I don't know, because I definitely found myself enjoying the son story more, because it felt like that's where the real developments were happening for the most part.
Well, I think that looking at it, I think that also might be part of it, is that the son is the through line of all of the plots. If you view, you got the father side of things, you've got the school aspect, and then you've got the stuff going on with Fix. The son is the one thing that threads between all three. But I think that there's so much of the father stuff in comparison to the other things. It feels like it's supposed to be kind of a companion equally plot, whereas instead it's kind of treated as a, B plot. It's treated as the secondary idea to what the son is going through, where I think we're a lot more interested in what the dad's doing, and it should have been a bit more intertwined across all the plots. Have the father, like the first time the father and Nina talk is later on.
That is not where I was expecting you to go with that. I thought you were going to say the opposite, because I think it's the opposite. I think they should have given the father less time, so he was more of a B plot. I think they've given too much time to his B plot.
I think that would be a fix as well, but I like the father character. I like this exploration of his hypocrisy. Anything I would want him to be boosted up more.
Well, that's the thing. I'm not even saying take out anything that happens with him. I'm just saying, does there need to be as much of it? Could you get the same points across more efficiently in less scenes? And I think that's kind of where I came out of like, feeling the movie as a whole, where I say, I think you could probably trim 20 minutes out of this, but not actually lose any of the beats, really. Maybe lose one or two like freak out moments because they're a little repetitive. But otherwise, I don't think you have to lose any like actual events. You just have to like trim things down.
Yeah, there's one bit, I think it's right after he gets attacked by Fix and the father finds him, is they have this debate as to whether or not they go to the ER or not, and then they come across a horse stable that was attacked by one of the critters, and all of that just kind of feels very superfluous. Yeah. I think you very easily could have just gone, he got attacked, and then later on he has stitches. You didn't even need the in-between.
Yeah, because they run into Julia again. This is like the second or third time they've bumped into her, and she's like, oh, hey, well, if you're scared to go to the hospital, we have like a field medic here. And, that sort of does that. And there's a little moment here that I thought they were going to like elaborate on her with her character a bit more, where one of her male co-workers walks past and makes a joke about, oh, you've got a visitor, I hope you soundproofed your room. I was like, oh, that's a bit misogynistic, just assuming that she like she's talking to a man, she must have him here for sex.
I'm not sure it's misogynistic as much as it's just the French culture where sex is like, yeah, sure, whatever.
It can be both.
It can be both. It probably is both in this context, but that was the thing where like she just immediately brushed it off. It wasn't even like a thing.
I don't know. It felt kind of demeaning. It felt like, because she's even kind of talking about, I'm looking for a change, and it kind of felt like, oh yeah, because you're miserable here with these people. Right. And it almost felt like, that was kind of part of what made me think she was going to have more to do, or she was going to be a bigger character than she ended up feeling she was. And again, if you cut out this,
and then the part. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, and again, if you cut out that chunk, then that's that would take away that, at least that element of it.
Yeah, it was that and the sequence where she like tackles him to the ground and he examines whether or not he wants to find his wife. Those two scenes in concert with each other. I'm like, Julia's going to play a major part.
Yes.
She has been given too much time here and to not, and then she just didn't.
Yeah, and that scene where she has to like sort of knock him down to like hide, that was an important scene though, because that's where the dad kind of opens up and starts talking about if he's not sure if he even wants to find her. Like he's determined and he's acting like he wants to, and he's like, we're going to go out. I'm putting up T-shirts with my scent and my son's scent on them to try and lure her out of the woods. Like he's so adamant that he's getting her back, but he's really kind of like, oh, do I actually want to find her? Well, what is the right thing for me to do? What do I actually want? And even if he is thinking I don't want to, is it for the right reasons, or is it because it's better for me now if I just let her go, because like it's just too much effort and work to try
that's what the son says later when he's shown up late to the fair and all that, and he's fighting with the son. The thing that triggers the dad is the son says, like, you only want to keep me safe so that I'll stay with you. You won't be alone. Like, that's the thing that triggers him. And that's, again, the full examination of his hypocrisy here.
Yeah. So there's lots of good stuff in this movie. It's definitely a movie with a lot of good ideas, and it's definitely a movie that's mostly well directed and I think well performed. And good effects and like a good message. There's just something about it ultimately by the end that I just didn't feel all completely clicked together into a fully satisfying whole for me, which is a shame. It's actually in some ways more frustrating, because there's not even like a big like, oh, this is the big stupid thing they did that like upset me and that's why I don't like it. Right. And it's not that I don't like it. I do think I like it, but I like it at this weird distance where I'm like, I'm not going to praise it and give it a super high score, because I just don't feel that passion for it. And it's a shame, because I don't think there's anything really that wrong with it other than some pacing issues. But hey.
I think for me, the vibe I was getting from it was, you know how occasionally you'll have like a director put out a short film version of something that gets expanded into a feature after it gets picked up at like a film festival or something. This felt to me like the short film version in terms of it was had all the ideas there, but they weren't fully fleshed out yet. They weren't fully turned into what the final product would be. Unfortunately, this is the final product.
Here's a weird thing, and this maybe takes a lot of the dad stuff out, admittedly, this suggestion. But I wonder if you just take out the whole mum thing entirely. Just have the father and son move to a new town, he starts changing, it cuts out several chunks at the start of the movie. It also takes out the obviously the reunion with her, but I still think you have him run at the forest, you have the military coming in and like sort of like disturbing the peace that's there, and you just have it be about the father accepting the son, and maybe you could have the father be more anti-Critter to begin with, but then his son turns out to be one, and that's still the hypocrisy at play kind of thing. It would change some things, and I'm not sure they're all for the better, but it does make me think, because I think maybe one of the things that the movie's doing is that it takes us a good 25 minutes or whatever before we start the son is changing into a critter as well, like he's got symptoms. And I just wonder if you could cut that first 20-25 minutes down considerably and get us to that being the more the inciting incident of the story. It would make the first half flow much quicker.
Yeah, I mean, it would definitely simplify down the plot for better and worse. I think you would have a lot easier time of getting to these more emotional points, but again, you would lose a bit in terms of like the hypocrisy of the father and all that sort of why he's so engaged in this to begin with. Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for cutting out certain plot points. I don't think the mom one would be the one I would cut, but I'm not sure. I think honestly, if we're talking about cutting a plot point, I would cut just the search for her. I would make that less of a focus. Like, she could still be around. It can still be a thing of we hope we find her, but make it so we're just not spending so much time going around in the woods and like making that a recurring plot point over and over again that ultimately never really gets a delivery on.
Yeah, and honestly, that was probably some of the duller stuff that was making it feel like it was a bit of a slog. I think maybe ultimately, though, I just want more nips and tucks, more than any like major excisions, but nah, it's an interesting one for sure. I'm not mad I watched it by any means.
No, not at all. I think that this is, as I said at the beginning, one that you should give your attention to. It's something that is worth checking out, but I don't think this is something that when people talk about, oh, what's some of the top sci-fi of like this era, or like, you know, even like stuff that deals with this sort of topic, the idea of like the X-Men style thing of an allegory for being closeted or anything like that. I don't think this is really going to be in the conversation. It just feels like a nice addition to the genre.
Yeah, I can see this like clicking with some people. I think there's probably a passionate small fan base for this who really love this. I think it probably did really click with some people. And I think the performances and a lot of the other elements are good enough. And I do mean, when I say good enough, I mean they're really good. So I think they're good enough to really draw some people in. And I think some people will just like love the characters because of how engaging the performances are. But for me, like, writing is more important. I mean, obviously the performances are important. If they show up and act like Neil Breen, there's a problem, regardless of how good the script is. But for me, the writing is always going to be a little bit more important than the performances, by and large, for a film, especially a science fiction film. So, all right, David, what was your scene of the movie?
Oh boy, what was my scene of the movie? I think for me, I originally, for like half the movie, think I was going to go with the squid in the supermarket scene, just because it was such a standout moment that really felt like this is kind of what I was expecting this movie to be. Because it's this idea of, you know, these critters interacting with normal society, with humans, and they're just, like I said, bull in a china shop sort of thing. It is a very striking visual to see this creature just flinging these fruits and vegetables and cans and stuff at other people. But as I came more to terms with what the movie ended up being, I think that the moment that really stuck with me the most was actually one we didn't talk about that deeply.
Go on.
And it's the moment that the father confronts the son. Like the moment that they're outside and he's basically like, giving him every opportunity to fess up to it. And he's just saying, like, ride your bike. I found your bike. Here it is. Go ahead and ride it. And son's like, no, I don't want to.
He tries to run, and the father has to like tackle him down, basically.
Yep. And that tackle moment, there's so much emotion in that moment. There is so much that is all showing, not only on the son's face, but the father's as well. I think that moment of showing the paradigm shift in their relationship now, where it's, okay, you're going through this thing, and as your father, I am going to protect you, basically whether you like it or not. I think that was a great moment for their relationship. So I'm going to go with that one.
Yeah, I think I don't know, I've got a few, like, they're all kind of like equal, like the two or three that I really like, such as Nina kind of like that first moment where Nina kind of compares her getting ADHD to whatever, and she doesn't even know what he's got at this point, but she just kind of recognizes that he's frustrated with something that's changing in his body and he can't explain it, and she understands that. She relates to that. I like that connection in the writing. But yeah, I also like kind of the payoff to his befriending of Fix, where Fix actually comes in and like saves them and starts like taking out some, or takes out at least one of the lynch mob. So I think I'm going to go with that, but there's definitely a few like sort of 3 or 4 scenes that are all kind of about the same level for me. But I think I'll go for the spectacle of that, because it felt like a nice payoff to everything. It was such a happy moment that's then cut short with Fix's death like right after, where it's like, oh, this happy, we feel invincible, we can take them on, we can fight them. Oh no, one of us has just been killed. Right. Like, you know, that adds some stakes to the whole thing. So, all right, MVP of the movie.
I feel like the obvious pick is Emile, is the son. I think the second choice would be the father, because he is just such a good actor in his role. I think that he does such a good job of taking what is obviously something that a lot of people can relate to, of a loved one who has fallen to an illness, and then you find out that someone else in your family has the same illness. I think that that's something that is very easy to relate to, but it being something that is so fantastical, he also adapts to that very well, and he's a very well-defined character. But again, the son, he's the one who goes through the most clear character arc. He's the one who goes through most of what we see in the screen is focused on him and how he portrays and stuff. Obviously, there's a little bit of a barrier here because of the language difference. Like, for all I know, they're speaking the like deep South version of whatever their accent is. It might not sound like, you know, fantastic acting if you are French, but I think I'm probably going to go with the father character, actually. I'm going to go with him. I just, something about his portrayal there just really landed for me, and I found it to be extremely intriguing. Not to say that the son was not incredible as well, but maybe it was just a little bit of, I was relating a bit too much to the teenage cringe, and I was like, oof, no, please don't take me back there again.
No, I think I have to pick Emile, just because I think the performance of his fear of turning in, particularly the portion where he's starting to turn into it and he's really scared, I think that performance was so good. And then contrasting that with his happiness as he's running in the woods later, or finally has his father be accepting of him. Like, I think that's kind of the heart of the movie in a lot of ways, and it kind of made the whole thing convincing to me. So I have to give props for that. I think it's not just that he's the most important character. I actually think the performance from the actor Paul Kircher, or Kircher, or however the French pronounce that name, right. I think I have to give that props. All right, visuals.
Yeah, as we said, special effects, practical effects, they do a very good job with that. I don't feel like there's a very strong sense of cinematography. There's a few times that it feels like it's doing something special, but it's not like a consistent vision over the course of the movie. But no, if we're grading it on visuals, it's really got to come down to how do the animals seem when they're portrayed, or the critters, and I think that they are fantastic. So all in all, I can't fault this at all. I think I'm probably going to say 7.5. Feels around that era for me.
Okay. We just disagree on like whether or not visual effects should include in visuals. I don't think they should, but their production value, as far as I'm concerned, visuals is purely cinematography and editing, and I think it is pretty solid on that front. It didn't feel amateur to me. It felt like it was very confident in all the things that it was doing. I don't necessarily think it sticks out necessarily in like a big way, but it did feel like it had a strong sense of what it wanted to do with every kind of like major scene. And yeah, sometimes that's about how it chooses to hide the critters and only show parts of them, or like how it focuses on, you know, like the big moments, like, you know, when Fix takes flight or when he comes in to save the day later on in the third act. Like, those big moments do feel like big deals, and they feel like there's some sense of spectacle to them, which stands out in a movie like this, which is not a spectacle blockbuster inherently. You know, it's just more down to earth and indie dramified. If honestly, if you have a critique about the visuals, I'd say it maybe goes a little bit too much for that indie kind of like, oh, the sun's lens flaring against the camera on the beautiful day, kind of tranquil kind of stuff. But I can't really fault it. So I think for visuals, for me, I have to just give it a nice 8 out of 10. So
okay,
I'll go with that. Audio?
You noted the score earlier on, and I recognized the score as I was watching it, but I can't say that there was anything that was like really stand out. I thought that they were going to do a little bit more with his super hearing, the canine hearing, because they have the one sequence when it's him freaking out at the ferrets, and then the other sequence of him on the phone with Nina and can hear her yelling from far away. But that's really it in terms of sound design that does anything creative. It's not bad by any means. Yeah, I'd say it's probably from the score standpoint, I think that's probably going to hit it another 7.5. It's just something that is good at what it does, but it's not doing anything that's amazingly stand out either.
Yeah, I think for me, the audio in this does boil down to a few key things. I did like the score when it came in, and it did have a couple of recognizable, happier themes that I think, you know, came in at the right points and kind of felt like I started to notice that theme come in again, and I think that's a good thing. I think when I start to notice a main theme recur, so I feel like a sense of familiarity with it as it's like advancing another major plot beat, I think that's good. I also think that something as simple as the various growls and screeches and, you know, the animal sound effects, you know, all work. They don't feel too over the top, but they kind of add to things. I mean, some of it is just performances. Like I mentioned, the actor screeching at one point when he was pulling the nail out. But there's also points where he growls, and that's clearly a sound effect where they've added in a real animal of some kind growling, and that stuff is you know, fairly well done. Otherwise, I don't know if there's anything that super stuck out to me about the sound, but I certainly can't say it's bad. It's definitely good, so I'm going to go 7 out of 10 on that.
There was one thing I needed to bring up, because it's right at the very, 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 very end. So as he's running into the woods,
yes,
the soundtrack, you know, it's this big orchestral swell. Everything's cool. Everything's great. And then as the music fades out, and it's on black, it's a black screen for a solid 10, 15 seconds, and all you can hear is this deep breathing. And I enjoy that as a choice. I think that it was a very good choice to make in terms of allowing the audience to get this sort of more animalistic primal feel of, you know, you're not left with any of the man-made stuff. It's just your own breathing you're left with.
Yes. The heavy breathing of a pervert standing behind you in a dark alley at night.
That's the furry. That's the one who's like, yeah, that was a good movie.
All right, acting.
Acting, it's great. I have no problems with any of the actors here. Everyone delivered a fantastic performance, even though just like I hesitate to call him the bully character because it's not who he was throughout the movie, but the guy in the friend group who was very one note in terms of, I hate critters, yes I do, let's beat them all up. He was still great.
All the friend group, other than Nina and himself, like Emil himself, were, you know, we're just there to be the one note characters they were.
Right. But they worked. None of the actors or actresses, I think, really played it as like a soap opera level of, I'm just here for this one specific thing. They brought a depth to it. So all in all, I think acting wise, I probably would give, I think I'm going to say 8.5. I think the acting is really top tier here, especially when you were talking so much about Emil and like his moments of fear and pain and stuff like that. Those moments just really escalate it.
Yeah, I think it has to be in that kind of range because I think Emil's performance especially elevates scenes that would just feel like, oh, it's like a werewolf movie where he's transforming but his fear and the way he actually yells out and his reaction to what's happening genuinely elevates it. And if a performance elevates the material, you can't not rate it well for that. You can't. I'm even considering a 9 for the acting here, because I think it was such a strong element in bringing everything up. And the others are solid too. I think that the dad gives a solid performance. Romain Duris is the actor there. A supporting cast I think Nina probably has the most to do performance wise next in terms of like what she's up to. And again, I think that stuff works. So it's like one really standout performance and then some really good, solid, like supporting performances around it. That said, though, I've never given a 9 for acting yet since we started doing these broken up things, and I'm debating whether or not I want this to be the first one. Do I establish this as a 9 for acting? I'm debating it. So I'll be nice. 9 out of 10. On you go.
All right.
Story.
Right. Pete thinks this is the best acting he's ever seen.
Did I say 10?
Well, you haven't given a 10 yet, so this is the best acting that has ever been seen.
It's the best acting I've seen in the last 3 months.
Fair enough. Yes, story. So, again, I love the setting. I think it's a very creative idea. It leans a little bit more into the fantastical than the science fiction, but I'm okay with that because of the way that they present it. The issue comes down to the pacing, what scenes we are shown, what scenes we are not shown. Obviously, there is some level of editing to this, but I do think it does come down to the way it was scripted to begin with, because, they had to put in, we go out searching for the mom this many times. We had to put in these drier scenes involving the father. I think the script, while is a great elevator pitch and honestly would probably really do well as a stripped down short film, once you hit this 2-hour mark, something needs to get scraped out. We've said that over and over. So I think my rating for it is probably going to drop to a 6.5. It's just shy of that good for me. It's just missing it. It one more pass, one more kill your darlings might have managed to save it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm conflicted on the score for this one because it I think there's a lot of good in the script, but maybe it could have been trimmed more. I think that's the biggest thing we've said it needed to do is just sort of condense down, be more efficient, be a bit brisker. So I think for that reasons, I think I'll agree with the 6.5 and say it's just shy of good, but it's decent still.
Yeah,
decent with lots of good elements, but just overall not quite hitting there. So production value.
Production value, I think that they did a fantastic job. They knew their limits in terms of the animal designs and stuff like that. And they also did just a good job of designing them as well, because it's not just a simple thing of, okay, now they look like a cow. Now they look like a bear. Now they look like whatever. They have to, from the ground up, design these different transitional elements of what happens when they're 50% squid. What happens when they're 90% insect. And I think they did a great job of that. I would love to see the art book for this movie. I would love to see the design documents. I think that would be extremely interesting. And again, they special effects wise, I think they really nailed it for pretty much everything. There is, every once in a while, a tiny little bit of special effect that is very obviously just CGI, but I think that it, for the most part, works the way it needed to. So I'm going to say production is once again at that 7.5 mark for me.
I think production value is quite impressive in this movie because it feels like it's punching above its weight in some big ways. It has, not like super fancy locations, but it's all on location. Like it never once feels that we're in a set in this movie. And that is,
I don't think they are.
Yeah, that always feels nice. It also has the good looking effects. It has surprisingly good effects, and like you said, it's not just they look good and convincing. It's that there's a design element to it. Like, how do we merge these wings and a couple of these bird features with otherwise a human body? And it comes out looking all right. There's moments where you see a creature curled up or sauntering along, or that weird big insect looking one crawling like on its tall legs. And I think that's the reason why there was characters in stilts. It was just for the contrast of someone's, because the guy who's stumbling home's on stilts. He's one of the stilt guys, and then that creature walks behind him, and it's like that's an intentional choice for the irony of like the real version of it and the fake version of it, and it just those like choices, and it always feels like it surprised me with how big some of the moments felt, particularly the fixed flying stuff. And when the military come into the forest whilst Emil's there during the night, those felt like very atmospherical. They felt like there was a lot going on there. So
that reminded me of the military scene. Reminded me of the second Planet of the Apes movie of the current trilogy.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that for sure. So I think for production, I have to go a solid 8 out of 10 on that. So I think what's so funny though is that I've just rated all these categories pretty highly. Like the lowest I went was a 6.5. I've given a 9, an 8, a couple of 8s even. You know, like I have went really positive, and yet I feel like my overall score here is about to be lower than you would think based on everything I just said for all those. And it's just one of those movies where it's less than the sum of its parts, and it's a shame when that the other way around is fun. When something's more than the sum of its parts, it's like, oh my god, this is crazy how great this feels, despite the fact that all the individual things don't feel like they're quite hitting. This is kind of the opposite, where I feel like all these individual things are great, and then at the end I'm like, yeah, but it's all right. Like I just don't feel that passion, and that's a shame. So, David, what is your final score out of 10 for the Animal Kingdom?
Oh boy, I think this still gets above a 7 for me. I think it is still good. I'm really up against the 8. That's the question. I don't think it's at 8.5 levels. An 8, like if I'm looking at previous 8s here, it just doesn't feel like it stands amongst those really.
I mean, it just,
but I can't.
Not that we're doing my score yet, but I don't think it's an 8. I don't think I can give this an 8 because an 8 is something I feel more passionate about than I feel about this film. I could not do it.
Honestly, I see the perfect comparison here of what I feel like I got out of this movie the same level of, and you didn't rate this anywhere near as high, but where I was at with Alien Nation.
Okay, right.
That I feel like the exact same sort of feelings of I like the world, I like the concepts, I wish they would have done more with it, but for what it was perfectly fine. So I think that's it. I gave that a 7.5. I think I'm going to come down on the same level here.
Okay. Yeah, I think I just got to go straight 7. And I realize those individual categories I rated higher, but when I introduced those categories, I made it very clear that they do not necessarily reflect what the overall score is going to be at the end. It's not an average or anything like that. And I just like my 7's me saying this is good. It is a good movie, but it's also a good movie that I don't think I'm ever going to feel compelled to watch again. And that's a shame because it feels like it's almost there. There's like elements of it that are like really touching that ceiling of this is something really worthwhile to recommend. And I would still recommend it in the sense that if you're looking for more sci-fi movies to watch or you've exhausted all the regular options, yeah, absolutely watch it. But is it something I'm writing to people and saying, you have to watch this? This is, you have to watch, I don't know, Primer because it's weird and it's different and it's unique and you have to see it. It's not that level of you have to watch it. It's not a have to. It's yeah, sure, if you're looking for a movie to watch, yeah, I recommend it. But
yeah. If I know that you are definitely the type of person who's okay with sitting down and watching French movie with subtitles, I think I'd be okay with recommending this film. But like, I'm not going to say all audiences will come and watch this movie.
Oui, some French cinema. You like some of that?
Cinema. Light up a cigarette. Enjoy the film.
Drink lots of coffee. Anyway, not that coffee's French, but they do drink a lot of coffee in Paris and whatnot. I picture it.
The standard French meal is black coffee and a cigarette.
Yeah. And the Italians are over there going, hey, coffee was our thing. You took coffee from us. You and those Americans.
Yeah, look, I will gladly have as much Italian food as humanly possible. I think for the past like 2 weeks, I probably had every night like an average of 2/3 of an Italian meal. Like 2 out of 3 nights for the past 2 weeks have just been Italian.
What, meaning either pizza or pasta? Is that what you're saying?
Mostly pasta, some pizza.
Okay, there's definitely pizza in there though. Even though I think
absolutely.
pizza has transcended Italian. Like I know it is Italian, but it's its own food group now. It's not like Italian is pasta and like
right.
variations on that, but pizza is just pizza.
Oh yeah.
Right.
What I consider to be Italian, and maybe this is going to be absolute heresy for actual Italian food, is bread, cheese, and marinara sauce. You give me any mixture of those three, and like, boom, I'm in.
Yes, I'm sure they'll love it that you're saying that. I'm sure there's way more to Italian cuisine than.
I'm sure, but I'm an ignorant American.
All right.
I only have what's presented in front of me.
Okay, so David's got his homework movie in a second, so stick around for that. But I'll just tell you about Patreon right now. If you want to support the show and help keep it coming, you can go over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and get some bonus shows over there for your troubles, such as Criterion Cut, where me and David review a movie from the Criterion Collection once a month, or Extra Reels, which is also once a month, and we review some of the worst things ever made. If you want to hear us get baffled, angry, just desolate, then you can go check out Extra Reels. Featuring Suburban Commando, which is around this time period, I'm sure. So
yeah, I think it's next week, yeah.
But yeah, we're almost like 30 episodes of that, give or take. So yeah, the whole backlog of those bonus shows have built up over time. Plus there's other bonuses for other shows on there as well. So and of course, check out Collector's Cut if you haven't. That's the other regular movie show that we do. Where we go through franchises, or we go through like a season of a movie, or movies by a director or an actor, or we'll do something like, we did 90s erotic thrillers as a season. So we do different like seasons of movies. Mission Impossible seasons, what's currently going on over on that. We're about halfway through that season around now. So, all right, every week on the show, David goes back and he checks out a movie from before he joined the show to catch up and whatnot. And then just in case I forget to say at the end, there's no episode of The Ace next week. So it's the week off next week, and we're back afterwards. I'll tell you what's going to be on that episode at the end, though. David, what was your homework movie?
Well, I couldn't find anything that even kind of related to this, so I just went with something from the 2020s that I thought may as well knock it off the list, because I'm surprisingly close to doing everything that you guys have done from the 2020s. The only ones I'm going to be missing are the fourth Matrix movie, because I haven't done all the previous Matrix movies.
Fair.
And, what's the other one in the franchise? Transformers. I have not gone through all the other Transformers, so Rise of the Beast is not on that list either.
Oh, it's coming at some point. Like, yeah. Sooner or later, there's going to be a new Transformers movie we need to cover.
I'll get there eventually, but as it stands now...
Yeah. I was going to say, I'll let the animated one slip, but as soon as they've got a live action movie on the way, you're in for it.
I know. So yeah, for this one, I decided to go back and do the 2021, it looks like, movie, Free Guy, which I gotta be honest with you. Why is this on the show? I understand that to some extent there's like tiny sci-fi elements, but this feels like you put...
Whoa, what do you mean tiny He's living in a video game, in a virtual reality. Science fiction.
Yes, but you could easily, like, that's feels like we're putting like the Mario Brothers movie on the show. Like, yeah, that's in a video game world. I know it's not objectively a video game world, but it just feels like... All right, so one of the major things in this that it feels like it was aping from is Truman Show. I also felt that in there as well.
Yes, a much worse Truman Show for the record.
Yes, much worse. Pretty much everything it was aping off of, it felt like it did worse.
Did you like when he pulled out a lightsaber? Did you like that, David?
The other thing it was aping off of was Ready Player One.
Yes, we're going to reference things. Have you heard of a thing?
It got... You know what? I was actually like kind of into the movie for maybe about 10 minutes. I was like, oh, it seems cool.
But then they played that Mariah Carey song just one too many times and you snapped.
Yes. I looked up trivia-wise. Apparently, in the original like planning phases, they were planning on using the song Your Love by The Outfield. I love that song. When I found that out, I downgraded the movie in my mind because they switched the song over to Mariah Carey. Like, I would have killed to hear the like slow orchestral version of that song playing over the climax. But anyway, yeah, no, this movie is just like full of references. It feels like Hollywood once again trying to cash in on gamer culture and not having a goddamn idea what that means. And like, again, I understand from the point of studios writing scripts, stuff like that. You need to be able to do stuff in video games that video games can't do for the sake of tension and plot and stuff like that. And this movie did an okay job of doing like, oh, we're going to do like server maintenance and like server downtime and something. It's like, that's usual. But then they also do crazy ass things that no video game would be able to do in the first place. And it's like, this just feels like someone who's out of touch trying to make a gamer video. That's all I'm getting out of this. So yeah, it's a Ryan Reynolds vehicle. Honest to God, like top to bottom, that's all I really got from it. It just felt like it was references and trying to cash in on a gamer audience that ultimately, I don't think they were going to get anything out of this to begin with, except, oh, hey, look, a bunch of the streamers I watch are appearing in this video.
That's right.
They paid them off.
There's streamer cameos at one point where they're all talking, as if it's a game they play and they all talk about, oh, there's crazy things happening in the game.
Right. And like, that's the other thing. The third act of this movie is like, everybody is watching it. They're all watching the live stream of it and they're all live reacting to it. And I'm like, no, you'd have maybe like 5% of the population max would give a crap about this, and not certainly all of these streamers are going to be focusing. Anyway, long story short, there are aspects of this movie that I was vaguely interested in when it started, and then I think pacing-wise and how quick they were just throwing out video game references galore immediately killed the fun for me. And then it was just an hour and a half of like, oh God, this is still going. So, yeah, it's not great. I think I'm probably going to side at a 5.5. Like that's kind of where I'm at. I think you gave it a 5 if I'm looking at the right one here. Yeah, you gave it a 5.
That sounds right. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, I again, it had some funny moments. I'm not going to say it was joyless. It definitely had some funny moments, but it had funny moments in the same way that Deadpool has funny moments, where it's like, that's just the specific style of humor we're going for. Is it's just a little bit wacky, and you got to be okay with that.
All right. Well, there you go. So yeah, a week off next week, like I said, and then we return just after.
Oh my God, that's right.
May the 4th, meaning that we finally conclude the prequel trilogy with Star Wars Episode 3: Revenge of the Sith. Why are you so excited looking, David?
Because I you know what, I was going to save this for the review itself, but I remember this one coming out. I was the exact target audience. I saw this in theaters no less than 4 times, Peter.
You sick, deviant freak. What?
Like 13. What are you talking about?
What the hell?
Yeah.
You should be locked up. You should be put on a list.
Yeah.
Sex offender list.
Hold on, that's a bit far.
You're a pervert.
Yeah.
So that's all I'm getting from this conversation. All right.
I have an unnatural desire to watch people slowly walking down a hallway before the scene ends, the conversation.
So I can't wait to see who has the high ground. So join us in 2 weeks for Revenge of the Sith. Yep. And yeah, we get another treat after the week after. I won't say what it is, but it's not something. We basically have 2 things back to back that I am dreading watching. So look forward to the misery for a couple of weeks. And if you want more misery, go check out Extra Reels on Patreon. But that is the show, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction and computer ad salsa.